The world looks different at 3 a.m. The silence isn't peaceful, it's heavy. The empty hallways that look normal during the day turn into endless tunnels of darkness at night.
You tell yourself you are alone.
You tell yourself it's just the building settling.
But deep down, you know. Welcome to the Whisper Archives, Volume 2. Tonight, we are clocking in for 5 true, terrifying night shift encounters.
That will make you never want to work after dark again.
Lock the doors, and let's begin.
There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with working the graveyard shift in a corporate high-rise. It's not just that you're alone, it's that you are surrounded by spaces designed for hundreds of people, all currently empty. I was an IT analyst for a finance firm, working on a server migration. It was 3:15 a.m. on a Wednesday. My office was on the 14th floor, an endless sea of gray cubicles, harsh fluorescent lights, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the sleeping city. The only sound was the low electric hum of the air conditioning and the buzzing of the lights overhead. It was so quiet that I could hear the blood rushing in my own ears. I was deep in focus, typing away at my terminal, when I heard it. Click, clack. I froze. My fingers hovered over my own keyboard. The sound had come from the other side of the floor, near the sales department. I waited, holding my breath, telling myself it was just the building settling or the ice maker in the break room. Click, click, clack. Spacebar. It wasn't the building. It was the unmistakable rhythmic sound of someone typing on a mechanical keyboard. I slowly spun my chair around. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small, swallowed up by the acoustic ceiling tiles. "Is anyone there? Cleaning crew?" Silence. I stood up. The sales department was a maze of high-walled cubicles. I couldn't see anyone from where I was standing. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. I knew for a fact I was the only person with a keycard swipe after 10 p.m. Security was in the lobby, 14 floors down. I started walking toward the sound. The motion sensor lights in the hallway flickered on as I moved, illuminating the empty rows of desks ahead of me like dominoes falling. As I got closer to the center of the room, the typing started again. This time it wasn't slow, it was furious. Click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. It sounded like someone was angrily hammering out an email, typing at an impossible speed. "Hey!" I shouted, rounding the corner of the last row. The typing stopped instantly. I stood at the entrance of the aisle, my heart pounding against my ribs. The row was empty. Every chair was pushed in. Every monitor was black. I walked down the aisle, checking every single cubicle. Nothing. No one under the desks, no one hiding in the corners. I reached the desk at the very end, the one where the sound had been loudest. The computer tower was missing. The monitor cables were dangling loose. The desk was completely cleared out, covered in a thin layer of dust. Nobody had sat here in months. I let out a shaky breath, laughing nervously. "You're losing it, man. Just lack of sleep." I turned around to head back to my station. Click. Clack. The sound came from directly behind me. Loud, angry, right at the empty desk I had just looked at. I didn't turn around. I didn't investigate. The primal part of my brain took over, screaming at me to run. I sprinted back to my desk, grabbed my car keys, and bolted for the elevators. I didn't even shut down my computer. I told my manager the next day that I had a family emergency and couldn't finish the shift. I never told him what happened. I didn't want him to think I was crazy. But I know what I heard, and I know that in that empty, dusty cubicle, something was working late. I put in my 2 weeks' notice a few days later. I haven't worked a night shift since. There's a specific kind of boredom that comes with working security at an empty warehouse. It's 99% fighting to stay awake and 1% sheer, unadulterated panic. I learned that on my 3rd month working the graveyard shift at a distribution center in Ohio. It was 3:30 a.m. The facility was massive, over 200,000 square feet of concrete floors and high metal shelves. My job was simple: sit in the main booth, monitor the 16 CCTV feeds, and do a patrol round every hour. I was sipping lukewarm coffee, staring at the grid of monitors, when something caught my eye on camera 9. Camera 9 covered the east corridor, a long, narrow hallway that led to the maintenance rooms. It was a dead zone. Nobody ever went back there, not even during the day. But there, standing perfectly still in the middle of the grainy black and white feed, was a person. They were facing away from the camera, wearing dark clothes. They weren't moving. They were just existing. "Hey," I grabbed my radio, thinking maybe a janitor had stayed late. "This is security. Who's in the east corridor?" No answer. The figure didn't even flinch at the sound of the overhead speakers. My stomach tightened. I grabbed my heavy Maglite flashlight and the keys, stepping out of the warm booth and into the chilly warehouse air. The silence was heavy. The only sound was the distant buzz of the industrial refrigerators and the echo of my own boots hitting the concrete. It took me about 4 minutes to walk to the east corridor. As I rounded the corner, I raised my flashlight, ready to confront the intruder. "Security, identify yourself," I shouted, the beam cutting through the darkness. The alleyway was empty. I swept the light from left to right. Nothing. No doors were open. There was nowhere to hide. I walked the entire length of the corridor, checking the locked maintenance doors. They were all secured tight. Dust motes danced in my flashlight beam, undisturbed. "Must have been a glitch in the feed," I muttered, trying to convince myself. "Just a shadow." I walked back to the booth, feeling a little foolish, but mostly relieved. I sat down in my swivel chair and looked back up at the monitors to log the incident as a false alarm. My blood turned to ice. The figure was still on camera 9, but they weren't facing away anymore. They had turned around, and they weren't at the far end of the hall. They were standing right in front of the camera lens, their face a blurred, dark distortion, staring directly into the lens. But the worst part? In the background of the shot, way down the hall, I could see myself walking away, my back turned to the camera as I headed back to the booth. The feed wasn't frozen. The figure had been there the whole time I was walking down that hall. I had walked right past it or through it, and I hadn't seen a thing. I didn't pack my bag. I didn't clock out. I just ran to my car and drove until the sun came up. I called my supervisor the next morning and told him I wasn't coming back. There are things in that building that the cameras can see, but human eyes aren't meant to. I never worked a night shift again. People think schools are wholesome places, but let me tell you, at 3 a.m., when the hallways are dark and the only sound is the buzzing of the fluorescent lights, a school is one of the creepiest places on Earth. I was the head custodian at a middle school in Oregon. It was a stormy night, the kind where the rain lashes against the windows so hard it sounds like gravel. I was down in the basement level, which houses the boiler room and a few overflow storage closets. It's a secure area. You need a specific master key to get down there, and I was the only person in the building who had one on me. The other set was locked in the principal's safe. I made my way to room B12, an old supply closet we used for storing extra desks. I hadn't opened that door in at least a week. I remember the heavy clack of the deadbolt retracting as I turned my key. I pushed the heavy metal door open and reached for the light switch. The long tube lights flickered on, buzzing loudly before stabilizing. I took one step inside and froze. The floor of B12 is sealed concrete, painted a light gray. It's easy to keep clean, but right there in the center of the room was a trail of footprints. They were thick, muddy boot prints, red clay, soaking wet, like someone had just walked in from the storm outside. My brain tried to make sense of it. I thought, maybe I left the door unlocked, but I knew I hadn't. I had just unlocked it. Maybe a window was broken. I looked around. The room was a concrete box. There were no windows. There were no vents large enough for a person. The only way in or out was the door I was standing in. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I gripped my mop handle like a weapon and followed the trail with my eyes. The footprints didn't start at the door. That was the impossible part. The floor near the doorway where I was standing was perfectly clean. The muddy trail started in the back corner of the room, behind a stack of old chairs, and walked toward the center, stopping abruptly in the middle of the floor. It looked like someone had materialized out of thin air in the corner, walked 5 steps, and then vanished. I walked over to the prints. I knelt down and touched the mud. It was wet. Not damp, wet. The mud was fresh. Someone had made these tracks minutes ago. The silence of the basement suddenly felt heavy, like the air pressure had dropped. I felt eyes on me. I slowly looked toward the back corner where the footprints started. There was nothing there but the solid concrete wall. I didn't finish my shift. I backed out of that room, locked the door, and ran up the stairs so fast I almost tripped. I left my keys on the desk in the main office and never went back. I don't know how those footprints got there, but the fact that they were wet meant that whoever or whatever made them was still in that room with me when I turned on the lights. Working the night shift at a hospital morgue takes a special kind of person. You have to be okay with the smell, that sharp mix of heavy antiseptic and something earthy underneath it. But mostly, you have to be okay with the silence. It was my second week on the job. I was down in the basement level, which is where they always keep us. It was 3:15 a.m., dead of night. The only sound was the constant low-frequency hum of the cooling compressors that kept the storage wall at a frigid 38 degrees. I was sitting at the intake desk, organizing some paperwork for the morning examiner. It was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent bulb above me buzzing like an angry insect. Then I heard it. Thump. It was a dull, hollow sound, heavy. It didn't sound like something falling on the floor. It sounded like it came from inside the wall. I froze, my pen hovering over the paper. I waited. The building was old. The pipes knocked all the time. I told myself it was just the compressor cycling off. Thump. Thump. My stomach dropped. That wasn't a pipe. That was metal hitting metal. And it was coming from the cold storage units. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. I walked slowly toward the wall of stainless steel doors. There were 12 units in this bay. Only 3 were occupied. I checked the clipboard hanging near the door. Unit 3 was empty. Unit 5 was empty. Unit 4 held a John Doe, a fatality from a head-on collision on the interstate around midnight. The paramedics had confirmed he was gone long before he arrived here. I stopped about 5 feet away from Unit 4. The room was dead silent again. I stared at the silver handle, holding my breath, praying that my mind was just playing tricks on me due to the isolation. Bang! This time, it wasn't a thump. It was a violent slam against the inside of the metal door. The force was so strong that I actually saw the heavy steel latch handle jiggle. I stumbled back, knocking into a prep table. The noise echoed through the tiled room. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking in terror. "Is someone in there?" Bang, bang, bang. It was frantic now, fast, desperate. It sounded like someone hammering their fists against the steel, trying to break out. The vibration hummed through the floor and up into my boots. Logic told me to open the door. What if the paramedics made a mistake? What if he was alive? But every instinct in my body screamed no. The air around the unit felt unnaturally cold, colder than a refrigeration should allow. And the banging, it didn't sound weak like an injured man waking up. It sounded angry. I didn't open the door. I ran. I scrambled up the service stairs, bursting into the ER lobby, pale and gasping for air. I made the security guard go down there with me. When we got back, the room was silent. The The guard opened Unit 4. The body bag was still zipped. The man inside was cold, stiff, and clearly deceased. But when the guard unzipped the bag to check his face, we both saw it. His knuckles were bruised purple and broken, and the inside of the body bag was smeared with fresh blood. I gathered my things and walked out right then and there. I don't know what kind of energy stays behind when a life ends violently, but I know it doesn't always stay quiet. I never worked a night shift again. I saved this story for last because it is the only one that still gives me nightmares. Ghosts are scary because they're the unknown. But real people? Real people are terrifying because they are unpredictable. I was working security at a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle. It was a standard office building, 3 floors of cubicles, a break room, and a lobby. My shift was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. For the first few weeks, it was the easiest job in the world. I sat at the front desk, watched Netflix on my phone, and did a quick patrol every 2 hours. But around the 3rd week, small things started to get weird. It started with the break room. I would do my rounds and notice that things were slightly off. The refrigerator door would be cracked open a tiny bit. A bag of chips I swore I saw on the counter earlier would be gone. I brushed it off. I figured maybe the cleaning crew was snacking, or maybe I was just tired and misremembering things. Then came the noises. It was usually around 3 a.m., the dead center of the night. I would be sitting at the lobby desk and I'd hear faint creaking sounds coming from the ceiling. It sounded like the building was settling, but heavier, like a slow, rhythmic shifting of weight above my head. One Tuesday night, I was doing my 2 a.m. patrol on the 2nd floor. The floor was pitch black, illuminated only by the green glow of exit signs and my flashlight. As I walked past the break room, I stopped. There were crumbs all over the floor, and directly above the table, one of the drop ceiling tiles was pushed aside. There was a dark, gaping square hole in the pristine white ceiling. I assumed a pipe had burst or a tile had just fallen loose. I grabbed a chair, dragged it over to the table, and climbed up to pop the tile back into place. As I stood on the chair, my head came level with the ceiling grid. I shined my flashlight into the crawl space. The beam of light cut through the dusty darkness of the plenum space, wires, ductwork, and steel beams. But then the light landed on something that didn't belong. About 10 feet away, nestled between 2 large HVAC ducts, was a pile of rags. No, not rags. It was a makeshift bed made of stolen office jackets and insulation. There were dozens of empty chip bags, apple cores, and water bottles scattered around it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I moved the light slightly to the left and I froze. Curled up in the corner, behind a steel beam, was a pair of eyes reflecting the light. A man was up there. He was gaunt, with wild, matted hair and dirt smeared across his face. He was frozen, holding a half-eaten sandwich, staring directly at me with a look of pure animalistic malice. He didn't scream, he didn't run, he just smiled, putting a finger to his lips. I fell off the chair. I scrambled backward, crab-walking out of the room, and sprinted for the stairs. I locked myself in the security booth and called 911, screaming that there was an intruder in the ceiling. When the police arrived, it took 4 officers and a canine unit to drag him out. He wasn't just a homeless man looking for warmth. He was a wanted fugitive with a history of violent assault. The police told me later that based on the amount of trash and waste up there, he had been living in the ceiling for at least 2 weeks. But the part that made me quit that very morning was what they found directly above the security desk in the lobby. He had removed a small piece of the tile right above where I sat every night. He had a direct view of me. For 2 weeks, while I watched movies and relaxed, he had been directly above my head, watching me in the dark, waiting for me to leave my post so he could come down to feed. I never worked a night shift again.